Hey, everybody, welcome to Empowerment Sessions with yours truly, Philip Suber. Now, this podcast is meant to empower the authentic version of you to impact the world around you like only you can. So, before we get into our conversation, if you haven't already, please take a moment and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and also share with someone that you know. All right, ready? Let's go. Hey everybody, this is Philip Suber, and thank you as always for joining, for giving me your ear to share my thoughts, truths, and convictions with you, knowing that it is at the end of the day empowering to you. You may hear a little water in the background. Today I'm recording from the beach, um, just enjoying the serenity, enjoying the peace, and just looking at God's creation. It's amazing. But we've been talking about things that we should stop to make room for the things that we should start. And today I want to continue this conversation by highlighting the things that we should continue. You know, one thing that is important for us to do is to be consistent. And to be consistent, not to everything, but to the most important things that are going to get us where we need to be. And that's in your individual goals, that's in your spiritual life, that's in your relationships, that's in your entrepreneurial works, that is in even your personal health goals. And that's even in the thought processes in which we think of every day, the thoughts that we entertain. And so today, I want to encourage you to highlight those things that are working for you. And I understand that there are things that work for us in terms of the seasons of life in which we are. And then there are seasons where we discontinue those things. But I want to not highlight the actual working or the actual thing in particular, but I want to highlight the need to continuously evaluate where you are in life. You know, in business, we have quarterly goals, and, at my job, every week there's a conference call where we evaluate where we are as a company. What's the action steps that we need to do, and what do we need to discontinue, or what are we lagging at and need to put more effort and attention towards and focus towards. And I think that in our personal lives, or in our lives completely, we need to take that same energy of always evaluating where we are in comparison to those goals and those core values that we talked about in earlier podcasts. Because when we lose sight of looking and understanding where we are, it's hard to gauge where we need to be. It's hard to gauge and strategize as to what those next steps are. It's hard to discern what's working and what's not working. And so it's important for us to set the cadence of our lives in such a way that however you want to do it every month, at the end of every week, every 2 weeks, in some instances at the end of every day, evaluate what you were able to accomplish, short term, and how they lead to your long-term goals. It's important to do that. In this society, we've embraced this idea of letting go of people, letting go of situations, and getting tired and fainting. And I don't want to say that it's popular, but it is common. It is very common. And oftentimes we aren't reminded of the things that we should have continued in until we realize the effects, because we didn't continue in it. And part of that is because we are carried away by the busyness of society and day-to-day chores and activities, but it's important that we continue to analyze where we are. I think about the scripture where it says that your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my pathway. And when I hear that, I immediately understand that the lamp doesn't necessarily show you what's ahead of you in a far distance. The lamp shows you right where you're standing. It shows you what's immediately in front of you, that you can reach out and touch what's tangible. And we have to remember to shed light on where we are. Your word is a lamp unto my feet. You show me what I'm standing in. What am I entertaining? What am I entertaining in terms of relationships, or in terms of conversation, in terms of my thought patterns, and in terms of my plans? What am I entertaining? Where am I? And am I in a place where I want to be? But then the scripture also says, a light unto my pathway. You show me the direction that I need to go. But take notice to the sequence. Before I know where I need to go, I have to know where I am. And so that's my thought for today in the things that we should continue. Now I know that there's things that are working for you and they've never failed you, and so you continue in those activities, but understand that when the seasons change, so will your activities. Sometimes your goals will change because it will call for you to be flexible. It will calls for an audible. It will cause for you to have a change in how you're doing the things. And don't get how you're doing it confused with what you're doing, because sometimes the pathway may change and the action steps that are needed to accomplish that goal will change based off of what is required of you in that moment. So in some seasons, working out is always a good thing to keep your mind flowing and keep you busy. And sometimes being still, sometimes sitting by the water like I am today is a great way to refuel, to analyze, and to think deeply in reference to things. But at the end of the day, my goal is not how am I going to get to this place where I can think clearly. My goal is to get to a place where I can think clearly. And that place may change. That method may change. It may be sitting on my porch one day, but the idea is, in order to maintain peace and stability and focus, I need to get to that place. And so it is with you. Maybe your money goals, your financial goals, maybe your business goals, they may change in terms of the method, but the goal, the ultimate objective, hasn't changed. Maybe the short term or the smaller goals to get there may change, but the ultimate goal doesn't change. So I want to exhort you and I want to encourage you to don't become governed by your feelings. Because sometimes when you look at where you are, it doesn't feel good. Sometimes when you analyze where you are tends to get interjected with this idea of, this is not where I should be. I should have been further, or I've been delayed in some areas. I took a detour. I took a wrong turn. Don't get discouraged by that. That's the reason why you're stopping to take an analysis of where you are. That's the reason why you are looking and allowing truth to be a lamp to your feet. And us have to do this on a continual basis. Don't let everything else drive you to where you forget to be faithful to the things that will keep you, that will propel you, that will rejuvenate you, will restore you. Maybe you've lost some assurance in previous battles of life. Well, we're in a society that says keep going, keep going, keep going, but there's a way to keep going and still be consistent in taking a pause and allowing yourself to regain focus and to regain clarity, or to sharpen your focus, to sharpen your clarity. Every stop is not a stop. Some stops are a way of continuation, of progression. Some stops are a disguise that you're actually going further. You're actually going. And sometimes that pause gives you the momentum that you need to push past the barriers that are going to be ahead of you, to push past the obstacles that are going to be ahead of you, because you can strategize. You can see what is it that's ahead of me. That you got to be continual in your ability to always analyze where you are. I'm not saying make a mountain of it, but I am saying be consistent in it. Some brief things that I do want to highlight. Be consistent in loving yourself. Be consistent in affirming yourself. Be consistent in believing in yourself. You see, I'm sitting out here and I'm looking at these waves, and these waves are just coming in cycles. They come, and then the water settles, and then another wave comes, and then it kind of settles a little bit, and then another wave comes, and that's the way life is. It's a current. Life is a current that continues to flow. But don't you let the currents of life drive you out of your peace, drive you out of your confidence, drive you out of your focus, drive you out of your ambition to move forward. Don't let it drive you away from clarity and peace of mind and knowing and understanding who you are. Take the time to be consistent, to believe in yourself. Take the time to be consistent in your connection with God. Now, that's a big one. You know, I had a conversation the other day, and in the conversation was the realization that most often, many people are, we're consistent in acknowledging how we feel about something. We're consistent at pointing out the negative in things. We're consistent in pointing out obstacles, but we aren't as consistent in affirming ourselves. And therefore, when we look at these obstacles and we consider our feelings that are just as volatile as the water that I'm in right now, we forget the stabilization of truth, of who we are. And we forget, and we let other things begin to define us. But no, you have to be consistent in affirming yourself, knowing who you are and what you bring to the table, loving yourself. You know, self-care seems to be a consistent theme that's on our social media. It's in our therapy sessions. It's everywhere we turn. Even in corporate America, our jobs are now giving more emphasis to that, depending on the company that you work for. But more so in corporate America, it's a necessary thing that we need. It's imperative for us to move forward, for us to be effective. And we've got to be consistent in it. Be consistent in your diet. That's a rough one, but it's necessary, because if you want to achieve the results that you're looking for, it's going to cause for you to be consistent. Consistent even against the resistance of your feelings, so that you can achieve the goal that you're looking towards. You know, as a homework, I think it's really good for each of us to take an inventory of what we feel, but not only what we feel, but how our feelings have navigated us, how our feelings have taken control of our perspectives. And the best thing about this homework is that it enables you to see what feelings are you fostering that are not working for you. Are they bringing you on a low space? And why are those feelings, why do they have the ability to move you in the way that they move you? Is there because we're not consistent in making the appropriate evaluations and saying, this is how I feel, but it's not who I am. It's not the end. It's not the totality of my situation. It's just how I feel. And then take those feelings and begin to use those feelings as tools to get you where you need to be. And don't let your feelings contaminate your heart. Don't let your feelings contaminate your vision. Don't let your feelings strip you of your strength to move forward. But let these feelings serve as warnings, serve as signs that point you in the direction of truth. And the truth may be that this feeling I'm feeling is not right because something's not right. Or maybe I'm feeling this way because I haven't been healed from an experience that I had or multiple experiences. Maybe this feeling is telling me that I need therapy. Maybe this feeling is telling me that I'm too isolated and that I need to surround myself with a different type of people. Maybe I need to change my friends. Maybe I need to change my environment. Maybe I need to change me. Whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you don't let them deprive you and strip you of your ability to be consistent in the things that are working for you, in the practices and the disciplines and the habits that are working for you. You know, I want to go a little bit deeper in this because there are some disciplines that we should be consistent in. The Bible says that a man should always pray. And I realize that some of you listening to this may not be what we call spiritual or religious, but I do want to tell you that your connection and your relationship with God is the most imperative of all relationships. It governs your relationships with man. You know, the Bible talks about us having favor with God and with man, with the emphasis being on God first. And so I want to tell you and I want to encourage you that sometimes when life is out of sync, it's because we're out of sync. We're not in alignment with where God wants us to be. We're not in alignment with the thoughts of God. We're not in alignment with the will of God. And we may not be in a place where we're seeking His will. And if that's you, I want to encourage you in this analysis to redirect your energy, to reconnect with Him, realign with Him. I know this world is judgmental and people will say many things and have various opinions about you. And I know that you're judgmental of yourself. We are judgmental of ourselves by nature. But I want to tell you that God is there with loving arms. And His love is even displayed in the correction. Because He doesn't want us to go astray. And so when you talk about things that we should be consistent in, yes, consistent in our diets, consistent in our disciplines and self-care, but be disciplined enough to be consistent with God. He's faithful. And I can't tell you how many storms I've been through where I fainted or I wanted to faint. I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. But running to God, whether I'm right or wrong, has always put me right where I needed to be. Be consistent. Be consistent in that. You know, it wouldn't be an empowerment podcast if I didn't bring you to the place and the source of power and point you in the direction of power and point you in a direction of strength, to point you in a direction where you have connected to the source, far above the resources, knowing that the favor of God will meet you in the boardroom, the favor of God will meet you in the courtroom, the favor of God will meet you in the hospital room, the favor of God will meet you in your room, in your kitchen, in your car. It will meet you in the place of emotional distress. It will meet you in depression. God will meet you. I'll end it with this story. And you may have heard this because it's been said in so many settings about the man who, I guess, in a storm and the water was rising and he's praying, God, come get me. And God sends somebody in a boat and he says, no. I don't need you to thank you. You know, God's gonna get me. God's gonna save me. God's gonna rescue me. And you know, I'm kind of paraphrasing this in my own words, but you know, the water rises and this man finds himself on top of his house. And a helicopter comes and, you know, they're letting down the ladder and saying, hey, come on, grab the ladder. We'll pull you up and we'll bring you out of this thing. And he's like, no. And God's going to get me. God's going to rescue me. Sometimes we're looking for some supernatural experience. Sometimes we're looking for some miraculous thing to take place. But, God's in the simple things. God is in the simple things. And you know how the story goes. He ends up dying. And he says, God, I cried out to you. In other words, I prayed to you. I sought after you. And I was waiting for you. And God says, I came. I came in a canoe and you denied me. I came in a helicopter. You denied me. You rejected me. Now I want you to think about all the times that God has come to rescue you. God has come to intercept your depression with thoughts of empowerment. I want you to take a moment to reflect on the times that God has come through favor from some person, some organization, some opportunity that has come your way, but you denied it because it didn't appear to be God, or it didn't appear to be what you were particularly looking from. I remember preaching a sermon and in it explaining how sometimes our expectations are our own limitations. Well, I just want to point you in the direction of God, your source, who has all the resources at his disposal. And I want to encourage you to be consistent in your relationship with him. Be consistent in your walk with him. Be consistent in listening to him, finding that place where you and him can commune. And it's not just about you casting your cares, but it's also about you receiving his peace. It's about him giving you strategy. It's about you relinquishing the things that have depleted your capacity to receive him and all that he has for you. Consistency. So we've talked in these past few sessions about our core values. We talked about identifying them and keeping them before us. We talked about how in corporate America it's usually a start, stop, continue, but we've changed the order that we would identify first the things that we need to stop, the things that we need to let go of, the things that we need to discontinue, so that we can have capacity for the things we need to start, have the energy for the things that we need to start, and have the clarity and the focus for the things that we need to start, and then the things that we need to continue. And of all the things that we can identify as key elements that we need to continue in, key practices and key habits that we need to continue in, I want to make the most paramount: continue in your relationship with God. Last thing, and then I'll let this go. When you think about the location of the earth as it relates to the sun does not revolve around the earth, but the earth revolves around the sun. And as the earth continues to revolve around the sun, this is how we get our seasons. This is how we get our days and our nights. And I want to tell you that if you're in a place of stagnation, it's because you stop evolving around the sun. And the sun is God himself. Stay connected. Stay connected. Stay consistent. Stay consistent. And stay faithful. Stay faithful to yourself. Stay faithful to your core values. And stay faithful to God. Hey, I hope this has really reached out to you guys. And I hope that this has really spoke to more than just one level and area of your life. And I hope that it is giving you light. And I hope that it is giving you hope. Because if you've stopped in areas that you should be consistent, if you're breathing right now, you have the opportunity to start again. See, sometimes when we look at what we need to continue, it may not be something that we're currently doing. It may be something that we realized that when I was doing this, it was working for me. And when I stopped doing it, it became my detriment. So with now, I can identify it as something that I need to continue. So continue on, and don't stop. Keep moving forward. All right. I hope that you take a moment, and if you never shared this podcast, please take a moment and share this one. Share it on your social media. You can share it with me at I am Philip Suber at Instagram. Share it with somebody. Send it in a text message. Share it. Because somebody else needs to hear this just as much as you do. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Keep going. Hey, thanks again for joining me in this discussion today, Empowerment Sessions. I really appreciate and hope that you did take the time to subscribe if you already haven't, and also if you took a moment to share it. If you haven't, you still got time to do it. Now, listen, remember that this podcast is meant to empower the authentic version of you to impact the world around you like only you can. Now, you can follow me even after the podcast is over on Instagram at empowerment_sessions or at I am Philip Suber. And even on Facebook, you can join the empowerment community as well if you follow me on there with Empowerment Sessions page. All right. I look forward to adding you guys to the group and seeing your comments on how this podcast has really impacted you in a positive way. Until next time, remember, it's all about you being empowered to help the next generation.